Hi everyone, great to see you all for today's Lunch and Learn. Feel free to put your camera on, always lovely to see faces, whether that's you smiling, whether that's you eating your sandwich or eating your soup or whatever. Lovely to see you here for this session. Before we dive in, I'd just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, which of course will be different for all of us as we're meeting across Australia and possibly across the world. For me, that's the Minjungle people of the Bundjalung Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to any Aboriginal people joining us today. If you'd like to share where you're tuning in from today, please pop it in the chat. And I'd like to pass it over to Sam Bricknell from TechVisa. So Sam's going to be taking us through some of the complexities and challenges and opportunities for if you're looking for talent overseas, or perhaps if you are the talent and you're looking at getting a visa to come across to Australia. So Sam, I'll pass it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm coming to you from Mianjin today. So just wanted to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. And so I guess we're going to go through there's a few like key visa subclasses that might be relevant to you because you're looking at being the person who's coming in and looking at your visa options, or it might be if you are the founder of a startup and how we can help to get the right people in for you. While you go through your growth stages as well. So it's a relatively small group. It'd be pretty interactive. So feel free to jump in. We've got a few people online. We've got Emily there, who's our general manager down in Sydney. She'll be answering questions in the Q&A section down the bottom. Zach also online there as well. We're jumping in too. And Natasha, I think, is online as well. So we're all here to kind of help out as we go through it all. So like I said, any specific questions, throw it in the Q&A, and we can also address some of them at the end as well. So I'll just share my screen here as well. I'll get this one up. Okay, everyone can see that okay? Yep, perfect. So yeah, TechVisa, I guess a little bit about us to start off with. So we're an immigration firm in the, I guess, relatively niche area of doing visas into the tech startup and scale up sector as well. That could be across anything from kind of climate tech to fintech, anything in between. We started off kind of doing everything for everybody, and then realized that the real value comes in when you just know your niche really, really well, and you can just answer questions as people call, and rather than having to go back and always research and take time, we can just help people with that scaling process as quickly as possible. So there's obviously a bigger team behind it, but Natasha and I are the co-founders of the business, both coming from a recruitment background. So understand the challenges that come with scaling, finding the right talent, making sure it is the right talent as well. It's going to help your business to actually succeed and not just plug a hole. And then moving into the migration side of things, it means that we also understand there's that additional cost that comes when you're not just hiring somebody, maybe paying a recruitment fee, but also doing a visa process. You want to get that decision right, because it's just an extra commitment that you're having to really put into your business to find that right person. If you make the wrong decisions, obviously it can be more costly. So we're just here to make sure that it's not just a stopgap, just someone to come in and plug a hole. Like I said before, it's someone who is actually going to really be a senior member of your team, really help your company grow, and you get maximum benefit. So Natasha's coming from, I said, a recruitment background, also heavily invested in the angel and investor side of things. We've got, and for me, it's, I guess, yeah, again, recruitment background. And when we started the business as well, it was very much a, we'll do anything for anybody. I think the reason that we then rebranded and went to TechVisa is just, like I said before, it's really that we're able to really offer some good value to our clients through all of that. So the focus I'll go through today is these main subclasses here. So some of them you would have heard of, some of them you may not have as well. The point of, I guess, having a few different options as well is it's not just, okay, well, this is the only option you've got. Of a 482, you need to sponsor somebody. because that could take quite a bit of time if you've got someone offshore needing to get police checks and medicals and things. So we look at all the different ways that we can possibly get people onshore for you as quick as possible. We absolutely love what we do. So we're working with these game-changing tech companies. They're absolutely brilliant. They're way above our pay grade at times. So you're talking to people and you have no idea kind of how they come up with these ideas or how they're executing them. But if we can help them with getting the right people onshore, then that's what we want to really make sure that we can do for you. So the 400 visa, I guess, is the first one we'll go through. It's a short-term project-related visa, so it could be up for just a few months. 3 to 6 months, I guess, is the main kind of timeframes that we go for on that one. That helps you to get people onshore really quickly. Once they're onshore, then we can look at, okay, what are the longer-term options if that position could possibly go on a bit longer as well. The 482 is the company-nominated visa. That's the one that I guess most people have heard of. It's the old 457 that is now it's changed over to the 482. Was in 2 streams. So there was the short-term stream, which was a 2-year visa, and the long-term stream, which was up to 4 years. Now they've the lists haven't come together, but they've made it so that there could be options for PR for both of those coming in later this year. Obviously, I'll go through that in a bit more detail in a second. 186 is the permanent residency. So there's 2 streams there. It's direct entry, which means that you can get there possibly sooner if you can meet the skills assessment requirements. Transition stream means if you've been in that business on a 482 for a number of years, then you can transition across to PR without needing that skills assessment. And the global talent visa, which is the other key one. It slowed down a little bit at the end of last year, but it's really ramped up again now. So we're seeing that start to move along a little bit. So sponsorship options. This is if you're setting up the business. So if you're the founder of a business and you're looking to sponsor someone on a 482 visa, then you need to go through this process of setting up as a standard business sponsor first. It's valid for 5 years. And it allows you to nominate and sponsor as many people as you need to across that time while you go through your scaling. The next one there is accreditation. So that's not just sponsorship, but it's like a fast-tracked version of it as well. So if you're an accredited sponsor, which means you need to have met a few of new criteria around, the amount of turnover that you've had over the last few years, the amount of people you've nominated over the last few years as well, then you can get accreditation. What that means is then there's a little bit of a lightening on the requirement for advertising. There's also there's less advertising required. There's also, it's sped up a little bit as well. So instead of, it could be an auto-approved nomination as opposed to it being assessed because you're a trusted sponsor. And also things like police checks. You can get away with not providing police checks if you can vouch for the person's character as well. So it can kind of bring those timelines in quite a bit. We've been working with the Tech Council of Australia over the last few months as well. And one of the things that they're pushing with Home Affairs is that the accreditation status could actually be extended out to startups who've received funding as well, because they understand that, for a startup to find the right person, it might be that they need to actually get those people in a lot faster because they're up against some big companies who've got much bigger budgets and everything. So by extending out that accreditation to startups who've received funding from a local VC, then that could be a possibility as well. So the 400 is the first one that we'll look at. So like I said, it's kind of a project-based visa. It's relatively quick turnaround. You don't need police checks. You don't need medicals. You don't need to advertise. You just need to say, with a letter of support, which we assist you with drafting up, this is a critical role in our business. We have the project timeline of how long you need that person for to be able to execute on that work. And then you provide that letter of support with the visa application. There's obviously more to it than that, but I guess that gives you a bit of a really quick breakdown of what's required. Processing times depends on country. If it's coming in from the US or coming in from the UK, it could be as little as a couple of days. If you're coming in from some other countries, it might be up to a couple of weeks. It just depends on the office that's actually processing it, because it's not done onshore, it's done in that country. So like a UK person would be, or US would be processed in Washington, for example. So it's just a much, much quicker turnaround. Like I said, grant period could be 3 to 6 months, depending on how long you need the person for. They have to be outside Australia when they apply and when the decision is made. If they apply offshore and then come in, then it will be refused because they don't meet that requirement of where they need to be at the time of approval. We can get multiple entry as well. So, you can come in for a couple of months, go home and see family, come back in, make sure that you're not just you're stuck and it's only single entry. So we'll always ask for that one as well. And the main condition is that you just have to only work for the company that's made that nomination for you, that's got you in to do that piece of work. If you work for another company, then you're at risk of that visa being cancelled, which, like I always say, it's just not worth the risk. Like, you come in, you do the piece of work, and then we look at, if you're here and that work is going to continue on, then we can look at, well, what is the next visa option for you when you're onshore? This bit here, so the first point, actually not the case, so we'll take that bit out, but yeah, must be short-term, non-ongoing project work. So if you get here, like I said, and the role does actually evolve and there is a longer-term option for you to stay, then great, we'll do that. But yeah, the main purpose of the 400 is that you're here relatively short-term and not looking at that longer term. Highly specialized occupation is the key to it as well. So you've got to really put it to Home Affairs or the processing office and say, this is a really highly skilled role. We need this person. We cannot find these skills in the country in such a short period of time. This is the right person and we need to act on it immediately. So again, that's something that we do. We really help out with that process and making sure that once it hits the desk of the processing officer, they look at it and go, yeah, this is obviously, it's a no-brainer. We need to make sure this one goes through because it is such a highly skilled role and this is an amazing looking company. So that's the kind of emphasis we try to put on it. There's no English requirement. Like I said, if you're here and then you look at going for a longer term visa option, then yeah, there might be English requirement to do a test, but that can be done onshore. And there's no skills assessment required. We just need to use your resume to really stipulate that, or really show, I guess, that it is a highly skilled role. You have those skills to come in and fill that spot. So it's a brilliant visa. It's actually really, really good, one that not many people know about. And especially in areas of climate tech where, there's a lot of emerging roles that the skill sets just aren't here. So, you're looking at green hydrogen and things like that. It's just, there's not a lot of highly skilled talent onshore who can step into these roles. So by finding someone offshore who can come in, really help with setting up processes, really help with like ramping up the team locally, and then maybe they head back offshore or they stay and look at longer term options. But it is a brilliant visa for that purpose anyway. It kind of fills that gap, but also gives you the longer term options too. So the 482 is the other one, the one that most people would know. So company sponsored, it's the one that we focus on most as a business. It's 3 steps, I guess, in this process as well. So the main one, like I said in that slide a couple of slides ago, is the setting up as a standard business sponsor. So the SBS application, that's only done once. It's valid for 5 years. So once that step is done, every visa you do after that is just step 2 and 3. You don't have to do the step 1 again. So once you are set up as a sponsor, which is just showing that you are your business, a legal entity in Australia, you are operating, you don't need to be profitable yet, you don't need to have revenue yet, you just have to show that you are a business registered and that you have operations happening, then we can make sure that you get that SBS. The nomination side of things is where it starts to get a bit more intricate in the details. So you've got, there's some critical timelines, I guess, with any nomination that we do. So you have to advertise the role for 28 days, for example, and it has to be on 3 particular sites, or 1 site in particular, and then 2 others, but it has to be up for 28 days. It has to have certain detail in those ads to make sure it meets the requirements. And if it doesn't, then it can just be refused. And that means all of that money is gone and you don't get a chance to just relodge free of charge. You have to go through that whole process of advertising again for another 28 days and then lodging again at additional cost. So that's the step that we come in really heavy at. So the nomination side, before you post the ads, we make sure we review the ads. It meets all the requirements. Once you post them on the job sites that we give you the links to and make sure it goes in the right place, we then track those. So we grab them at day 1, day 14, and day 28, so that we have all of that evidence. It's not reliant on you because you're obviously busy running your business, doing what you do. This part sits with us. You then obviously look at assessing the people who did come through that ad response. If the person that you originally identified is the right person, then great, we can move ahead with that person still. If you identify 2 or 3 others through the advertising, then even better news for you. You know, you get the original person for a visa, plus you get an additional couple maybe off the ad response. So that's the nomination application. There's a few other like key timeframes on that. So the ads have to be up for 28 days. The contract has to be signed after the end of the advertising, and then we can go ahead with lodging the application. And then the visa application is more on the applicant side. So this is where, if you're the applicant online now, you would need to show you've got a degree and 2 years of relevant experience. If you don't have a degree, then you need to have 5 years of relevant experience in your field. So that's across almost all occupations, except for, I think, like if you're in medicine or if you're in an engineer, not computer engineer, but like chemical engineer, I think you need to have a degree in that, and it must be relevant as well. Processing time for that. So once the advertising is done, which is a month, then it's around a month from lodgement. Once we hit submit, again, sometimes it can be much, much faster. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer, but that gives you a good idea about around the kind of average time frame at the moment. There was something that came out the other day that said they're aiming at, or they've got it down to around 21 days of processing at the moment for 482s on average, which is brilliant, because a while ago it was up to 6 or 8 months and it was out of control and people were waiting forever and people were falling through and money was lost. So it's really good what they've managed to do in there now. Visa grant period, you're looking at 2 to 4 years. So there's, like I said, there's a short-term list, which is the 2-year visa, and you can renew that for another 2 years. Or there's a long-term list, which is 4-year grant. It used to be only the 4-year visa would allow you to move to PR down the track, whereas now they've indicated by the end of this year, the short-term list will also have that pathway. So previously, if you're in marketing or recruitment or sales, you couldn't get PR. It was a 2-year visa. You could do a 2-year renewal, and then that was it. You had to leave or, I don't know, find a partner and do a partner visa or something like that onshore. But now it actually gives you the option down the track to be able to move to PR, which is brilliant as well. You can be in the country or outside of the country when you apply. So like I said, if you're overseas and we're applying for this, because some people don't want to make that move across earlier because they've got family, they've got commitments and everything, then we just do the 482. Once it's approved, they come in. So you're looking at a couple of months lead time, plus maybe a notice period, but within a quarter, you would have people onshore in your business and there'd be the right senior skill set from wherever. But unlike the 400, you can actually be in Australia already as well. So a pathway some companies have taken that we've worked with in this cohort as well, it would be a 400 to get the person onshore. Once they're here and they realize, okay, this is where I want to be, the role may continue on, then we can look at doing the 482 while they're here. So there's no delays and there's no downtime, I guess, between the visas, because you would get a bridging visa that allows you to continue to work onshore while you're waiting for that one to come through. You can travel in and out while you're on the 482 as well. There's no issues there. So like I said before, the main eligibility is that you've got the degree and you've got 2 years of experience. If no degree, then 5 years of experience. The relevance of the degree is something that comes up a bit in questions. It doesn't need to be highly relevant unless, again, it's in certain sectors like medicine or engineering. But if you're a software engineer, for example, or if you're in UX, UI or sales, then you don't need to necessarily have a highly relevant degree. But the experience must be. Like, you must have 2 years or 5 years of highly relevant experience to be able to make that move. Labour market testing I spoke through before, so it must be done for at least 28 days. English language requirement, depending on country of passport, yes, it's needed. The salary that you're paying must be above 70K plus superannuation, so not as a package. That's just gone up recently by about 5,000, so it's not, I guess it's not outside of the realm. And also it doesn't need to be all on a base. It could be like, say, 60 or 65K as like a base salary and then have a guaranteed bonus component to it. It can't be dependent on anything, but it must, at least by the end of each year, you must have made that 70K plus super. And as a business, sponsorship obligations apply. So you need to make sure that you are looking after people. There's no exploitation. If they leave your business, then it's paying for them to return home. Or if they leave your business to go somewhere else, then you must inform Home Affairs via us to say, they're no longer working for us. That then starts a timer of 60 days for them to find something else and make that move into a new company or to leave the country. The
Sam,
186.
can I jump in and just ask a couple of questions
Yeah,
on
for
the
sure.
482?
Yep.
I'm curious, the different grant periods of the 2 to 4 years, is that you would choose for 2 years or 4 years, or is it up to that person to kind of choose somewhere in that time period?
Yeah, it's up to the person and us, I guess. So what we'd do is we would give advice around, there's no point doing a 4-year visa if we could potentially look at permanent residency in a shorter time frame. For each year that you nominate, there's a training levy you have to pay. So it's $1,200 or $1,800 a year. So there's no point doing a 4-year visa at a cost of $7,200 on the training levy. If you can do a 2-year visa, it costs $3,600 instead. And then you can look at permanent residency in the meantime and use that saved money towards the new application. So we'd always look at, there's twofold. So it saves the money for the business, but also it's retention strategy as well for the business. It's not just saying, we've got here's a visa. It's like, we've done it for what you're meant to do it for, which is 4 years, and that's it. Let's worry about the rest of it later. It's saying we've actually consciously thought about this. We want to retain you in the business. So we've got a pathway for you. And that pathway is going to be a 482. And within the first 18 months, we're going to help you with your PR. And then once they're PR, then obviously they get access to Medicare, and you lose the requirement to pay for school fees and things. So there's some real benefits to getting there sooner, obviously, retention and just cost wise.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on the other side of things, for somebody that was applying for this visa and they were considering this, if for some reason within that grant period, it didn't work out with that employer, and as you said, I think there was 60 days for them to find something new.
Yep.
Would they need to find like another employer? Do they still need to, how does that work for their visa at that point?
Yeah, so I guess it can work in two ways. That might be that they decide to move on from the company because they've got another job offer. So that new company just has to take over their visa. So it's lodging a new nomination application for them to take over that visa. The other one could be, and we've seen this recently, obviously, with like a downturn in funding and everything, where companies have just had to make redundancies. And what we do is, as soon as we hear that news, we get in touch with all of the people that we know are in that company on a visa, and just put their mind at ease firstly and say, look, it's okay. I know obviously it's a shock that you've lost your role. You've only got 60 days to find something else, but we will help you where we can to find something else where a company will sponsor. So even we've got this really simple like eligibility assessment, which just says, your name, what your role type is, how much it will cost to transfer, and how long it will take. And then when you're applying for new roles, you just attach that eligibility assessment as well. And it gets rid of some of those objections which might come up, because 60 days is not a lot of time, and especially if that company hasn't advertised yet. So they need to go through the advertising, which is 28 days. All of a sudden, if you don't get that offer until after 30 days, all of a sudden that time frame is really, really tight.
Yeah.
It's also, you got to think not to panic completely. Like at the 60 days, you don't get a letter straight away saying you have to leave. You might get a letter saying, okay, we understand now you're outside of that 60 days. You now have to make arrangements to leave the country, which gets you a bit of extra time as well. So it's just, we'll work with you as much as we can to make sure that, you can make that transition, hopefully find something else, get around those objections along the way, and get into a new role.
That makes sense. Thank you. And for everyone else, if you've got questions, feel free to pop up your virtual hand or put them in the chat, and we can organize to take you off mute so that you can ask your question as well.
Yeah, definitely. So the 482, it's obviously a great visa. It's what most companies rely on when they are scaling and need to get people in. It's obviously the obligations are there as a business as well. So the sooner you can get people to PR, the better. Hopefully they don't leave as soon as they're PR, and they actually love what they do and they love the business and the product, so they stay. But yeah, it's the same as any like any employee, I guess, like they do have the option to move on when they're on a 482 to another business. So, same as if you've got an Aussie employee in the company, but yeah, it's just making sure that, I guess you're treating your people well and they love the product, and yeah, that's the retention. And also, like I was saying before, if you've got that pathway set out for them, it's not just let's worry about PR later. It's no, we've got this and we've spoken with TechVisa. We know that we can do this one in 6 months, because that's when you get the right level of experience to be able to go through this process. And I'll step into that one now, because this is the important bit, I guess, where it does bring that up a little bit about timelines of when you can look at PR. This one is 2-stage process. So it's just the company nominating for saying this is a genuine role within our business and it's a critical role we need to fill. And then the visa application, which again is where, the individual needs to jump through the hoops of getting police checks and medicals and reference letters and things like that. So processing time it depends, I guess, again. So yeah, you're looking at around about a year at the moment. Some of them we've seen come through a little bit quicker than that. So it could be right in as close as 6 months or up to just over a year. I'd say we'd never want to overpromise. So I'd say always allow for, say, 12 months of after lodgement that it may come through. The good thing too is, I mean, if you're on a 482 or if you're onshore on a visa and working, then that shouldn't be an issue anyway. Obviously, once you apply for PR, then you get access to Medicare, which is one of the big things for a lot of people. The other thing that you get is a bridging visa in the background. So say your current visa expires or it's no longer valid, then you get the bridging visa, which allows you to stay here and continue working through that time. So it's not, while 12 months or say 10 to 14 months seems like a long time, you're still here, you're still working in the meantime, you still have Medicare, so you're okay. And then it's just hopefully it comes through sooner. If it doesn't, that's fine. You can still continue doing what you do. The visa grant is indefinite, so you are a permanent resident. I guess what most people see when they do get it through, though, is this 5-year thing. So 2 lines below that travel facility. So it'll say, you must not arrive after 5 years down the track. That just means that if you do need to leave after that and you haven't gone through the citizenship process, then you need to apply to have a travel facility on your visa. That's all that is. So you're still a permanent resident. You just have to apply for a resident return visa, and could be for a number of reasons. So say if you're Chinese, then you can't have dual citizenship. So a lot of people don't want to lose the citizenship in China, but they want to have the PR in Australia. So that's why people may not go down the citizenship pathway and need to renew their travel facility. You can be in or outside of Australia when you apply. I guess you wouldn't look at the 186 straight away if you're looking at bringing people in because of this time frame. If they're overseas and you decide we're going to get them in as a PR, then it might be a year down the track before they arrive. That's not going to fill the hole in your business. So it's not the right way to go. We'd look at how do we get them onshore first, on a visa, working, and then we can look at the PR option next. So there's 2 pathways. I think I mentioned these before. So first one is direct entry, which means, and this is the one, Alison, that I guess I was talking about before, we can look at doing this relatively quickly. So say you come in on a 482 and we just do, instead of doing a 4-year sponsorship visa on a 482, we do a 2-year one instead, or even 1 year, and say, look, the 482 will get you onshore much, much quicker. And then they can get a skills assessment. And as long as they've got 3 years of post-qualification work experience, then we can apply for permanent residency. So that could be in the first 6 months, or it could be after a year or something. So just make sure that we put in a bit of a time frame so that everybody's on the same page and you know that there is a pathway there. The other one is TRT, which is the temporary resident transition stream. So that's if you're on the 482, you've been with your business for 2 or 3 years. So it's currently 3 years, but it's getting moved down to 2. So if you've been there for 3 years, then you can just transition to PR without needing the skills assessment. So that one is quite good. And for that, you just need to show all of your pay slips for the last 3 years to say, yes, I've been here nominated on a 482. I'm now moving to PR, and here is my 3 years of experience proving that I have the skill set to continue on doing what I do. in the past, I guess pre-COVID, TRT was the most common and popular because it was just, you get here and people just worked and then got to a point of being able to apply for PR down the track. Once COVID hit, I think everybody got a bit more nervous about like the security that they had, whether or not the job was going to be there, whether the startup was going to be there, like in 6 months' time or something. So a lot of people said, look, I'll make the move over to this new company, but I need there to be assurances that you'll look at PR sooner because, yeah, I just want that security to make sure that I don't have to move and leave the country. Again, English language requirements and health and character requirements are there as well. So for health, yeah, it's just going in and doing like, chest x-ray and just a general medical and then a blood test. And for the character, it's getting police checks from every country you've lived in for the past 10 years. For most people, it's usually only 1 or 2 places, but it might be a few as well. And with all of these things too, we're not just kind of leaving you to your own devices. It's like we'll show you exactly where you need to go for each country to get the required police checks. So we'll send you the link to whichever country to show you what to do, as opposed to just, oh yeah, get one from wherever you need to. We'll make sure that we really kind of hold your hand through that full process. From I guess a business perspective as well. So we've realized that it's not just about doing a visa and just saying, okay, well, here you go. We've filled in the paperwork and we've done the forms for you and yeah, off you go. It's really about how we can work with founders who are looking to scale, need to make sure they've got a stable team, get the right people on board and make sure that they're building up a team underneath this senior talent that they're getting in and sponsoring as well. So we've really kind of honed in on that, I guess, and making sure that we're speaking with the talent teams internally or HR or the founders to like I said, not just do the visa, but to make sure that we get that right talent in and then what happens after that as well. So yeah, from a business perspective, it just shows commitment. So if you're going to sponsor somebody and say, yeah, no, we really, really rate you, we're going to spend this money on doing a visa for you, then it shows that commitment from the business, and in turn, hopefully that means there's loyalty from the employee as well. Like I said, it comes down to a lot more than that. You shouldn't just feel obliged. It should be, love the job, love the product. But that's, I guess, the biggest thing there. When they are sponsored by a business on a 482, then they can only work for that sponsoring business. So if they're going to move, it's a bigger thought process that goes through it as well. It's not just, oh, okay, I'll jump over to this job and see how we go. Like, you got to make sure that that move is the right one, because if you move to a new business, it resets the timing on your PR application as well. So say you've been somewhere for a year, you decide to move across, that's going to push out your PR application by another 3 years because it resets that clock. So you need to make sure that you really kind of think about that side of things. Business needs to show they've got sufficient runway to fund day-to-day operations. So when we're lodging any application for a business, we just make sure that, even if it is pre-revenue and like there's no sales or anything yet, that we help develop out those letters to show Home Affairs that, okay, yeah, pre-revenue has some funding, runway is about this amount of time, and we help to kind of make it so once it hits the desk or the screen of the processing officer, they'll go, well, okay, yeah, that makes sense, as opposed to questioning it, coming back, asking questions, and then it pushes out the timeline again by another month because you've got a request for more information. Again, kind of harping back to the bit before. So yeah, working with us and developing that longer term approach, which you don't want to go for PR too soon, I guess, because then you've got that risk that someone might just leave the business because they're permanent residents. So it's kind of that finding that middle ground where everyone's happy, I guess. So the company gets a really solid, good commitment out of somebody who's there on a 482. Then you look at the PR options. But also from an employee perspective, again, like you've been shown that the company's actually thought about you and thought about the process. And that's all we can say. It's just kind of having empathy for like someone who's in a situation of, here, it's kind of unstable. You don't know what's happening with the market. If this visa's cancelled, they've only got 60 days to sort themselves out. So we are thinking of you. We understand that's something that's always in the back of your mind. You may lose sleep over, so we'll help you as soon as we can. And that's what we want to try and do as well. Like just make sure the founders understand that, because their head is in the game, like they're doing the product and building a company, not so much on whether someone's losing sleep over something they haven't even thought about. So yeah, like I said, skilled visas, so it can be sponsored by business that's pre-revenue. We've worked with a lot of companies who've come through different accelerators and stuff, and it might be employee number one who is actually on a sponsored visa. It doesn't need to be that you've already scaled and you've got heaps of money coming through or anything. You definitely don't need to be profitable, because obviously pre-revenue is okay. Once you get down the track, obviously a few years down the track of being no revenue, then there might be questions, but that's again where we come in and we have to like really, work for our fee and make sure that Home Affairs sees why and why you still need these people to come in. The other thing too with like the role types in a startup is it's not like in larger companies that it's more traditional and they're siloed positions. So you are in marketing and that's what you do, or you're in accounting and that's what you do. Startups, there can be like multiple hats that you're having to wear. So we always look to see, okay, what is the best option? How can we make this work? What will get you to PR sooner as well? So it's never kind of going outside of the bound, like never untruthful in what you put forward, but it's always making sure that we look at the best options that could work for you. As I said, the multiple hat thing, and some companies as well, where it's brand new technology. And, there might even be, in some cases, it's a more mature market overseas, and that's where you're trying to get talent from. Sometimes, Australia's at the forefront of that technology and there is nobody globally. So you have to kind of get someone from outside of what a traditional role would be within some of these businesses too. And it's especially true in climate tech, where there's just so many new role types coming up.
Sam, I'm just curious on that, thinking of my own role and multiple hats. I need a hat rack in the background for all of the hats. I'm just curious, like, is that ever challenging on your end, presenting that to Home Affairs? I imagine that they are more familiar with like medical doctor or something, quite you've got a really specific label.
Yeah, definitely. And you even look at companies like, I know, in one of the companies in climate sales, so Vow, there's a lot of roles in a company like that. They're just not traditional positions, and it just doesn't fit neatly. So yes, it's a challenge, but also it's just, you just pick out the detail from their previous roles and then what they're going into that align best with whatever is in Home Affairs, in ANSCO, which is the list of occupations we can work with. It could be a challenge, but also like we haven't had any refusals off the back of having to kind of reorganize or kind of align with a different occupation or whatever. So it's really about how it's stepping back a little bit from it. So sometimes, if you're really in there in the weeds, then it can be difficult to kind of see it. But that's when, we work as a team, and then someone will come to me or Natasha or Emily and say, what do you think of this? And when you're outside of it, you can look over the whole thing and go, actually, you know what? I think it aligns with this one. And that's when we work really closely with the company. So rather than just us say, yeah, it's this, do this, or them telling us what the go is, collaboratively, we put together like a comparison table and say, okay, these are all of the duties as a management consultant. These are all of the duties in your role. Now list out the things which align with that for your previous positions, and we find the right occupation that way. So it really, and the good thing about doing it that way too is it not only helps to, I guess, justify it to ourselves and say, yes, okay, this is the way it works. It also helps to write the ad, it helps to write the job description. It helps to really kind of put in process for that business moving forward. It's like, okay, this is where it fits. It's a non-traditional role. And so every time they hire someone else in that, they'll go, okay, well, this is what we did last time. So that actually makes a lot of sense, and they can go down that pathway. So it just puts in kind of, process for the business as well.
Yeah. It's great to know that for like how you're supporting startups. Obviously, in the climate salad community, that's something that we look at. And so, between knowing about that role type and then also how you can support companies that might be pre-revenue, I think that's really important to highlight. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, we've worked with some companies where, I know, one of my favorite companies, one called Morse Micro. So they've been around since like 2016 or something like that. And, they're still kind of in product development and everything, but we've been working with them the whole time. Absolutely amazing company, hiring a lot of people globally, but needing to bring a lot of them onshore because it's obviously a hardware product. And So it's and yeah, no issues with a company like that either. And that's the fun part. You know, you're working with these founders through that whole journey from when they're like 4 or 5 people together to all of a sudden having an amazing office in Surrey Hills and absolutely blowing up. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. So the other part for what we do as well is, okay, so we help with all the visas coming into Australia, and hopefully all of this has helped with that. We also have started to work towards more kind of global mobility. So if you are looking at doing that expansion piece, and key markets that we've seen, if for a lot of our companies in the past, have been into, you know, if you're going into Asia, like Southeast Asia, for example, we've incorporated in Singapore as well. So we can assist with visas going into Singapore if that's going to be a market, and stuff into Indonesia as well. The UK as well, we've got a recruitment partner over there. Sorry, not recruitment partner, an immigration partner over there who we partner up with. And then with the US, we've actually got a US immigration attorney internally as well. So we can help with those regions. If it's outside of that, we'll always do what we can to help you to get in touch with other people. We understand that there's, you know, so many other markets out there. Obviously, you know, going into South Asia, like India in particular, it's absolutely huge at the moment. So any other areas you're looking to go into, we'll do what we can to find the right partner for you as well. But those are the main regions that we look out for right now. Like I said, it's to help out with not just doing visas, but global mobility, because you don't necessarily want to be an Australian company, you move into the US and your first hire is someone in the US who doesn't know your product, hasn't worked in the business, doesn't know the team. If that first person works for you in Australia and they go across there and they are the ones that actually help to expand the business over there, then obviously, you know, you've got someone trusted on the ground, and that's the bit that we help out with. I guess it's getting those first people over there. And that is it. So that QR code takes you through to the get in touch page on our website. And also hopefully there's some, Q&As that have popped up. If not, if Emily hasn't answered them already, then happy to go through a few questions now as well.
We have had some questions that Emily's jumped onto and answered in great detail, so that's really helpful.
Yep.
If there's anyone else that has any questions that they want to ask, either pop them in the chat, put up the virtual hand. Eric, it sounds also like you've got quite an interesting situation there. I don't know if you want to have a chat about it any further, if you want to ask some more detailed questions now. Sam, you might, pardon me, you might not have seen, but Eric's has an overseas co-founder with more than 5 years specialized experience with the Eastern European company. So that's sort of where Eric's coming from.
Well, yeah, what I'd say to that is, it's specific, and I guess there's, it could probably take a fair bit of time with other people on the call. So Eric, definitely get in touch, and like, there's no charge for initial consult, right? We can sit down and have a chat with you about that as well, and how we can help out and what the options might be and what the costs all look like too.
Fabulous. Great. We've got your email there, which is info@techvisa.com.au. Yep,
that's the one. And yeah, if it's just if you want to just reach out to Emily or myself as well, so it's just sam@techvisa.com.au or emily@techvisa.com.au. But that info one is manned by both of us too.
Excellent. Really interesting to see all the different visa types and to see, to understand a little bit about, those advertising requirements. That was really interesting to see. And it looks like we don't have any other questions at this stage. I don't know whether Zach or Emily, whether they have anything else that they can think of that they really want to share as well. But it's interesting when we at Climate Salad, what we're always thinking about is that our founders need capital, they need customers, and they need talent. And so and of course they're all interlinked. So it's really great to hear what you're doing at TechVisa, and especially to have been on your own startup journey over that time. You'll have a really intimate understanding of what our founders are going through. So really appreciate your time today on that.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Enjoyed it.
Lovely. Thanks, everyone. We will put that recording out as well. There will be a survey when you jump out. As you know, as founders, it's always really important to get feedback. So please answer a few questions there. And thanks, Sam and Zach and Emily, Natasha and the team from TechVisa for jumping in today. We really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks again. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.